I'm Dr. Sharma, physician, board-certified psychiatrist, and Air Force veteran. I came across this LinkedIn post the other day. The author basically said that there were real combat veterans who experienced direct combat. So, in his mind, these are folks who were in firefights, doing night raids, kicking down doors, digging ditches, and these were different from the fake combat veterans, those people who just stayed on base and only had to deal with indirect fire, but they were eating in the chow hall and sleeping on a regular bed. And his point was that those veterans should not be considered combat veterans, and that there should be a stricter definition of the term. Now, I'm not going to put that post up here because I don't want to put people on blast, but we're going to dive into why people might think this way and what it means for the veteran community at large. So, as you can imagine, the comment section was bustling. I did notice the disagreeing comments were far less. That doesn't necessarily mean there were less people who disagreed, it's just less people who posted on there. Now, this really got me wondering, psychologically, where does this come from, and how can we learn from it? Why do some folks feel that pride and need to protect the term combat veteran, especially when the term combat veteran legally applies to anyone who served in a combat zone? Legally, it's much broader than what this post wants to define it as. Have you ever noticed how human beings, including veterans, have a need to compare experiences? It's natural, right? It's like we're carrying around an invisible yardstick. People who will say, for instance, "Oh, you worked as a support guy on base eating at the chow hall? Well, I was in firefights weekly. We're not the same," stuff like that. But the problem is that it just keeps going. There's always someone out there who has been in worse circumstances, more combat, and had more injuries, and saw even more terrible things. In psychology, there's this kind of popular term called trauma Olympics, where people competitively compare traumatic experiences, almost like whoever has the worst story gets a trophy or something. Obviously, this is not helpful at all for anyone. Also because it works in reverse, where a lot of veterans will tell me that they didn't go to get care at the VA because they thought the next person has it worse. So they didn't want to take anything away from them. It's like this unending imposter syndrome among veterans where they purposely downplay their own experiences because they're measuring it against an impossible scale. This obviously extends to disability compensation as well. I've seen this very often. These mindsets are deeply entrenched in us. This also reminds me of a term called othering, which is when you see another group of people different from you as completely separate. And this conversation of real combat vets versus fake combat vets reminds me of this. It creates division for no reason. But let's go back to why this happens. Why would someone go on LinkedIn, of all places, and basically dunk on fellow vets for not being real enough, right? One reason is ego. Ego in the psychological sense isn't just like bragging or being arrogant. It's our sense of identity and self-esteem. Each of us has an ego. A lot of veterans understandably attach a huge part of their identity to their service. It makes sense, right? If you've been through hell and made sacrifices, it's natural to take pride in that and maybe feel like it sets you apart from others. But it's a double-edged sword. For some folks, enhancing the value of their own service becomes really important to how they see themselves. Like if they boost their own ego by comparing to others, they're saying, "Hey, I did more, so I am more." It's classic human behavior. It happens in almost all career fields or communities. So in the military context, it might be, "Hey, I saw real combat. I'm not in the same category as the supply clerk who never left the base." The underlying sentiment is about identity, defining oneself as a part of an elite, separate group with a supposed higher status. And I'll even speak for myself. I trained at Johns Hopkins for psychiatry, and early in my career, it was tempting or easy to think, "Man, I'm a Hopkins-trained psychiatrist. I know my stuff better than others." But it's a slippery slope. And I had to remind myself that ego can blind all of us. And we all, I think, have to recognize that at some level, even without our military service, whether we were in combat or not, we have intrinsic, wonderful qualities that make us great people. Sometimes the bravado of comparing yourself to others, like, "Hey, I'm a real combat vet," there can be an underlying insecurity under that ego. It's like they're saying it loudly in part to try to convince themselves and lift their own self-esteem. But the problem is, there's always someone who's been through worse, someone who's tougher, or you meet people in the civilian world who simply don't care about your CAR or CIB. Sometimes the bravado itself is a defense mechanism. Remember, I'm not blaming anyone, I'm not judging anyone. I'm trying to uncover what's underneath this whole argument and why some people feel the way that they do. There's a metaphor when talking about personality. If you take an uncooked egg, the outer shell is hard, right? That's the ego. It's a tough exterior, but once it cracks, the interior is soft and unformed. It's fragile. We want to be the opposite. We want to be like a hard-boiled egg. Yes, there is an exterior, it's tough, we have an ego, but even if that ego cracks, we have a solid foundation that is strong, fully formed, and can be resilient no matter what happens to us in life. So our outer shell of being a veteran or being whatever cracks, we still have a stable sense of identity underneath that. Who benefits when veterans are pitted against each other, especially over who is more deserving of honor or help? With this point I'm making, by the way, I'm not referencing this specific post or author, but just broadly. Because think about it, if society or the media or whoever can convince us that there is only a tiny sliver of veterans, say those who've been directly in a firefight, who actually deserve certain benefits or recognition, it potentially saves resources or money. Quick note, I just want to give a shout out to the members who joined the channel. I literally just announced it the other week and folks joined. Like I said, whatever comes in goes directly back into the channel to pay for subscription services, equipment, and later I want to expand this to evaluations for veterans. So thank you all very much. In recent months, we've seen what seems to be almost like a coordinated psychological operation, with media articles making fun of veterans getting disability for foot fungus, even though the ratings are 0% for that, and many other examples of straight up shaming veterans for taking advantage of the benefits available to them. And it makes me wonder about the underlying motivations, political ideologies funding these articles or initiatives. Basically, who stands to benefit? By the way, I don't use the PSYOPs term lightly. Chase Hughes is a former US Navy Chief Petty Officer who specialized in behavioral science, interrogation resistance, and human intelligence training. He developed programs on psychological operations, persuasion, influence, and behavioral analysis for DoD personnel. He actually developed a framework called the NCI Engineered Reality Scoring System, which basically scores whether something might be a PSYOP. And this scoring system is comprehensive. So I actually went through and graded the current offensive against VA disability. And guess what the score came out to? 64 out of 100, which falls into the strong likelihood range of this being an engineered narrative or PSYOP. Basically, the whole collective pattern of reporting on VA disability recently shows many signs of coordinated or manipulative framing, with scores of 3 to 4 on most categories. But with this combat veteran topic, imagine if public opinion swung towards that feeling that, hey, only those people who pulled a trigger at the enemy need support. You can bet that some people in suits would love to slash funding for veterans and spend that money on something else. You can call me cynical, but it's happened before in history, even in the Vietnam era. This is why I worry about this phenomenon I mentioned before, the othering, right? Seeing another group of veterans as separate from you, maybe beneath you, or alienating them in some way. We need to fight against that type of mentality or that narrative so that we can remain united. If there is someone trying to tell you that there should be a distinction between you and this other group, you might want to look at that person's underlying motivations. And even broader, outside of the veteran community, whenever there is someone, maybe a politician or influencer or whoever it is, trying to get you to think about another group of people as inherently rotten or evil or inferior to you, you might want to consider that person's motivation, the motivation behind why they want to divide us. Because in the end, veteran or not, we're all in this together. Let me know your thoughts on this topic in the comments. As always, I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about this debate about real combat vets and fake combat vets? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, you might like the episode I did on the psychology of division and fear. Click over here to check it out. Also, click over here to subscribe if you haven't already done so. I want to thank you for joining me for this episode, spending your time watching this video, and please like and comment. That stuff really helps the channel. As always, thanks for watching. Dr. Sharma signing off. See you next time.